Hi, this is Nancy Yearout, and welcome to my show, High Road to Humanity. In every episode, I tell you powerful true stories filled with great wisdom that you can use in your own life as you strive for a higher road to travel. My featured guests will have their own unique stories to tell that enlighten your mind and your soul. So kick back, relax, and learn the secret to success when you take the high road.
First touch, strong connection, it lays deep in your soul.
Hi, this is Nancy Yearout, and welcome to High Road to Humanity. And I have a fabulous lady here today. Tamara Rosier is here. Her book is Your Brain's Not Broken. And this one's going to hit home for a lot of people. We're going to be talking about ADHD, and I've never had anybody on the show to talk about it before. She's joining us from Michigan. Welcome to High Road to Humanity, Tamara.
Hey, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad you're here. You know, you're a PhD. I want to know, and you have ADHD. So I guess I want you to tell the audience your story. Like, when did you realize that you had it? When were you diagnosed? Talk a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I was one of those kids. I just always thought there was something wrong with me. And on one hand, I knew I wasn't dumb, but I also knew that it took a long time for me to memorize my multiplication tables.
Okay.
And to learn how to read a clock. And yet I knew I was using words like benediction as a third grader.
Mm-hmm.
And I could break it down into the Latin part, and because I taught myself etymology in third grade. So I knew I wasn't dumb, but I knew I had some weird things going on.
Okay.
And that's how my little brain kind of made it like, I'm quirky and I'm weird. As I grew up, I just thought maybe I am just really dumb because everyone else learned how to do these things faster. What I didn't know then that I know now is I had ADHD and still do. And those of us with ADHD have impaired short-term and working memory, which means I'm trying to perform like my neurotypicals and, my neurotypical peers, thinking I just want to be normal like them. Oh, and by the way, they always knew when recess was going to happen. And I was surprised every day. Like, whoa, it's time for recess?
That's crazy.
I have time blindness, like a lot of ADHD people do.
Right.
And so when you have ADHD, you just can't predict your environment as well, especially at the early ages.
Right.
So then I grew up.
Right.
And, flailed in college for a little bit because, I was first generation. My parents were like, goodbye, see you. And it's not their fault. That's what the generation did. And I didn't do well in college.
Oh.
And I found football players and I found other things, but I never found the library. So never kind of put together, like, you have to actually work to learn. I am so fortunate that I fell into teaching. I fell in love with teaching and I found I was very, very good at it.
Okay.
Especially with one population. Those are called the ADHD kids. And I spoke their language. And I couldn't figure out why all the other teachers griped about their job because I was having too much fun. It was wonderful. And then it slowly dawned on me, oh, you have ADHD.
That's why you connect.
And I'm like, oh.
So you diagnosed yourself.
At first, yes. Yeah. Remember, I was working with folks with ADHD have kind of an ADHD internal logic that we use. And if you don't have ADHD, you don't understand the logic. It's why when I'm working with clients, I can talk to the ADHD person easier because they understand where I'm coming from.
They get you. Yeah. And I think I have a little bit of ADHD, but because I do, I didn't read her bio. So I want to say.
So hey, how about we do that?
So Tamara has been a college administrator, a professor, a leadership consultant, a high school teacher, and a national public speaker, and an ADHD coach. Through those adventures, Dr. Rosier has developed valuable insight into ADHD and how it affects one's life. So she's the founder of the ADHD Center of West Michigan, and she leads a team of coaches, therapists, and speech pathologists to help individuals, parents, and families develop an understanding and learn effective skills to live with ADHD effectively. Now, her book, Your Brain's Not Broken, provides strategies, you guys, for navigating the powerful emotional aspect of this. You know, I don't know. I think maybe I have a little touch of it. I didn't have the same thing as you. Like, I learned my multiplication tables quickly. I can memorize and stuff like that. But I will say some of this stuff, and I just use myself as an example because that's how the only thing, I feel like I think it has a lot to do with emotions.
Radio.
I just feel like I could never handle when I was younger. I'm better now. And I talked to you about this before the show. Now that I connect with God every day, I'm more calm. But I used to just fly off the handle. Like I could not control my emotions. And is that part of ADHD?
100%. So the DSM, the book that we use to diagnose people,
Right.
doesn't even mention the emotional dysregulation that those of us with ADHD have.
Okay.
But the research is so clear.
Yeah.
And my book is one of the first books that kind of digs in and talks about the emotions. But there's going to be a ton of others coming because this to me is the hallmark trait. You know, when I talked about ADHD logic, it's because we start emotionally.
Right.
And so instead of starting kind of well, this is what it means, we start with, how do I feel about this?
Well, let's back up. Because you say a lot of things in here that hit home, but now it's different. I've changed it. So I do believe you. I know you have the ability to change it. You talk about just getting up in the morning. So let's start there.
Right. So I want to be clear. As you're talking, you have two things going for you. One, you've worked on your emotional regulation.
Mm-hmm.
And you've worked on it through meditation. And so that, like, for your listeners, they may not have done all the work you've done. So as we're describing some things, they're like, wow, I really can't get out of bed.
Right.
But then there's other of us who still have it, and we can get out of bed just fine because we found different ways to work with it.
But it took a long time.
Oh yeah. And let's be clear, our brains are ill adapted for modern world.
Yeah.
That I'm going to nerd out just for a quick second. There's that part of your brain that's the prefrontal cortex.
Right.
That's that little modern amenity that says, Tamara, here's where you parked your car. Mm-hmm. Tamara, do this. And it's like this little butler just kind of guiding us throughout our day.
Yeah, she talks about this in the book, you guys. I love how you I don't mean to interrupt you, but I love how you put this together because she's like the case of the missing butler. That's the
and that's, well, I watch a lot of BBC crime shows. So, you know,
I love it.
And so what happens is those of us with ADHD, we don't have that prefrontal cortex that can predict time, that can, you know, short-term memory, things like that. And so those of us who have ADHD, we start in a different place in our brain, the limbic center, and then we start to, well, how do I feel about this? My last client, she is excited, but not looking forward to this big tailgate party. I live in Michigan, so U of M is a big deal. She's going, she's catering, you know, it for her family and doing all this. Yeah. But she starts with the emotions. How do I feel about this? And it's this mixed emotions. I'm happy to do this. Wow, this is a lot of work. I feel overwhelmed. And we start there instead of a neurotypical person would start with kind of the who, what, where, when, and why.
Right. Well, I just want to back up and ask you because I don't understand. Why is it that I never wanted to get up and now I'm fine? No, but why did I want to get up in the morning? Why did I dread facing the day? Because that's true. And I'm being honest here. That's something that, you know, I used to have that. Now I don't have that. But where does that come from with the HDA people, you know, ADHD people?
So this is a little bit complicated. We tend not to be good at transitions. So we're like the law of inertia, a body that stays at rest or is at rest stays at rest. So we
Right.
don't want to actually have the momentum to actually get out of bed. That seems like a bit much to us sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then there's the emotional, like, I'm not even looking forward to my day. So now we have the emotional component coming.
Right.
And, oh, by the way, most of us can't figure out how to go to bed on time. And so we become these little night elves creeping around, and we love the quiet of the night, and we don't want to go to bed because the world is fascinating and sleep is a waste of time, or so some of my clients say.
Okay.
So you, the grown-up version of you, you've worked hard. You know that sleep is a vital part of your health. You know that mindset is a vital part. Every morning you wake up and you renew your brain. You're
Right.
like, all
But
right,
I
guys.
still lay there and think about all the stuff.
What do you mean by that?
Well, and you talk about that. ADHD people, like I'll get a thought in my head and then I'll get 20 other thoughts. And I was like, well, what was I doing? Where was
Exactly. You almost diagnosed yourself right then and there.
I? Why does that happen? I mean, that's true. And I'm like, I just figure I've just got a lot going on.
Yeah, we do. So what happens is, and I talk about this a little bit in the book. So we have I'll pick on our neurotypicals, those people who don't have ADHD. Okay. They tend to have convergent thoughts. They go from A, B, C, D, and so on.
Right.
You wake up and go, A, alphabet, numbers, letter, and it just kind of, it explodes in so many different directions. That's called divergent thinking.
Okay.
Oh, and by the way, it's like we take one idea and just blow it up into so many different directions.
I know.
We have brilliant imaginations. And some of us can use it for bad when we add anxiety to it. but we look creative. I mean, we can look like creative geniuses sometimes because we connect things that people would go, I would never have thought of that.
Right. But we do. Well, and I want to talk a bit about the book and how you put it together. I love that you tell stories. And I was hoping that you would talk about, there was a story in here. Melanie. Well, no, let's not talk about well, there's Melanie. She talks about the dirty babies. I thought that was crazy. But there was the one I really wanted you to talk about was Becky, and she's married, and she got married, and she's happily married, and then his behavior changed because I think this will hit home. Would you tell that story? Would you mind?
Yeah. By the way, none of the people I write about in the book are based on one person.
Okay.
The funny story about Becky and Todd, though, is I had 7 people contact me and go, wink, wink, I know you wrote about me.
Oh,
that's how common this is.
Okay, cool.
And there's one person who I cannot convince her that I wasn't only thinking of her. That's how common I'm going to tell you about.
Okay.
So Becky meets Todd. Todd is this incredibly smart man, and he's an engineer. Right. And she's just attracted to just how smart. She knows that his family's a little bit weird, but hey, listen, he's a great guy. And so what happened with Todd is, as life got more complicated, Todd had ADHD but didn't know it because he was smart. He wasn't a naughty boy. But what would happen is he would increase his emotional intensity to try to focus. And by the way, that's what those of us with ADHD do. We develop these coping mechanisms. We start the limbic system to create this emotional storm, and that sends all kinds of chemicals. We're like, okay, great. Now we can focus more. So along with that, so that's what was happening in Todd's life. He was life was getting complicated.
Well, so but I didn't, so like he started to speak to her derogatory and things like that. Where does that come from?
Okay. So when he's just going to work, and by the way, I'm not defending Todd. Todd was a jerk, but we love him.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we love him. He got help, but he was being a big jerk because what was happening is he was having to motivate himself through these big emotions. And when you're an adult doing that, you eventually land on self-loathing. And so you're motivating yourself by going, just hating yourself. Like, I hate myself. And it's like, imagine, those like basketball coaches who spit and yell at their players, right?
Yeah.
Imagine that in your head. Okay. That's who he had in his head to try to motivate himself. So then he learned some bad habits. Oh, and then his ego became very, very fragile. So Becky couldn't say anything like, hey, how about we do this? And he would lash out. It's because he was constantly carrying these big emotions.
Okay.
When I first met him, we met about their son. There is no way he would accept that he had ADHD. Except one thing, he and I could relate quite well because I speak ADHD fluently. But he was smart and there was nothing wrong with him. And so he is the kind of person that would go undiagnosed. He just looks like a jerk. And now he's learning different ways. He's appropriately medicated, by the way, which means he doesn't have to conjure all those emotions that are negative to get him to perform at work. Now he just has regulated dopamine that goes, hey, how about you do this report now? And his brain's like, well, that's a good idea. Let's do that. That's how his medicated brain works. He doesn't need all of the emotions just to live. What was happening is they were gushing out everywhere.
Yeah. Right. Because he was never taught to deal with, I think a lot of this has to do with people have never been taught to deal with their emotions. Our society as a whole has never taught how they teach us to suppress our emotions. And that's how people bring in dis-ease is when,
absolutely,
and that's part of it. I want to talk about children. My daughter says to me, I'll age myself if I say how old she is, but she said to me about 2 months ago, I was diagnosed with ADHD, Mom, and how come you never knew?
Yes. Because Mom, you're an abusive jerk for not knowing. Yes.
What the hell is wrong with you that you didn't know that? I'm like, oh my. Well, she said, well, my doctor said,
well, where do we start?
I'm sorry. I was at work a lot. I don't know how I missed it.
Yeah.
Do you hear this a lot?
All the time. So first of all, ADHD is very hereditary.
Okay.
And the problem is, and you can go back and say, hey, sweetie, you were a smart, well-behaved young woman.
She was.
We only catch the naughty kids.
Yeah.
And so that's the truth. Especially smart females. And this is what actually angers me. Smart females will go to a counselor and say, I need help. My mind is racing. I think 10 million thoughts at once.
Yeah.
And counselors will go, oh dear, you have anxiety, and medicate them for anxiety. And it makes me angry because that's not the problem. Now, anxiety pops out, as we've talked about, when we don't treat ADHD, but often the women have ADHD. And so it's a neurological difference. It's not the stupid boy disease that we thought it was.
Kid that acts out in class, right? That's how it got profiled for some reason.
Yeah. I don't know. It still is. It really still is. In the book I talk, how I've kind of outed myself as having ADHD.
Yeah.
How people still kind of put me down because of it.
Yeah, you do talk about that. Tell that. You were standing at a podium. I read that.
Yeah.
Tell that story real quick.
Well, here's a time I didn't talk about in the book that just pops into my head.
Okay.
I was on the sidelines as a mother of a soccer person.
Right.
And, the soccer parents were going, okay, so we collected this money. Let's do this. And we were doing all the parental planning to support our athletes.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, okay, so who's going to hold on to the money until then? And someone's like, well, don't let Tamara. She has ADHD.
Oh my God.
I'm like, I'm sorry, what's that now? Like, I literally said, I'm sorry, what's that now? Like,
horrible. Well, that's
It is,
horrible behavior. It's horrible behavior. Is
well, but this was an otherwise really wonderful man.
yeah,
And he thinks he was making a joke.
like
It
it
was
was
at my
funny.
expense. Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's what happens to those of us with ADHD. And that's why people don't want to let others know. It's like the world sees us as ditzy, dumb, airheaded, whatever. And I have to tell you, I work with doctors and lawyers and like these brilliant people.
mm-hmm.
They have a neurological difference.
Yeah. I'm pretty sharp. So I
Bet
don't.
you are. But yeah.
I want you to tell the story about the little girl and the monsters. Is that
Oh my,
okay? Tell that.
absolutely.
Oh,
This is one of my favorites because first of all, Nancy, I love the work I do. Um, I
it shows.
I love it because
It
I
shows.
see so many people who come into my office hurting. And when I say, no, 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 you just have a neurological difference that is kind of ill-fitted with a modern world, but it's not bad. We can learn to work with it. And we learn healthier coping mechanisms.
Mm-hmm.
So this little girl, she shows up with her mom, and her mom was so cool with it. But her mom had a lot of kids.
Okay.
And I think six under, I forget what it actually was. She had a lot of kids.
Yeah.
And so this girl shows up. She has and this one was hard to kind of make a compilation of because she's just a beautiful girl. Big brown eyes, and those big brown eyes that were kind of haunting, like looking everywhere and through you. And she's sitting there and she's studying everything. And her mom's like, hey, we have a big problem. She won't use the bathroom by herself. And now she's having accidents. And this girl was about 6 years old. So she knew how to use the bathroom.
Right.
And I said, okay, so what else is happening? And, I was asking the basic kind of trauma.
That's when you know it's emotional.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I wanted to make sure there wasn't something traumatic that happened. Right.
Right.
But nothing really traumatic happened. And so I turned to her and I said, what don't you want to see? And she looked at me and she goes, there's monsters. I'm like, oh. And here's what I know about ADHD brains. We make our own monsters because of that divergent thinking you and I were talking about.
Right.
We take an idea and we have an incredible imagination. And then we add just a little bit of anxiety there. We got ourselves a monster.
She blew it out of proportion is what she did.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And so she was so smart and so astute. And I said, oh my goodness, I completely get monsters. I have monsters. And she looked, she was very skeptical because, she was a wise young kid. And I'm like, I had monsters, and every once in a while they still pop up for me too. I said, when I was a kid, I used to jump in my bed because I'm pretty sure something was underneath there.
Right.
And sometimes I would get my sister to look, or in the closet. Right.
We did that too.
Yeah. And so I said, if you're ready, like I can share what I did to get rid of my monsters and what I still do. And I always ask for people's permission. Like, are you ready to do that? Because she created the monsters for a reason.
All right.
And if they're serving her a purpose,
mm-hmm.
I'm not quick to take that away. And I said, but it doesn't sound like it's a lot of fun. Do you want to take it away? And she, okay. And I said, so here's what I do. I make monster spray. And I love the mom. She didn't skip a beat. The mom's like, I'm going to need the recipe for that. I'm like, okay. It's peppermint oil, 10 drops of peppermint oil I gave the recipe to the mom, and the mom's writing it down. And then the mom was brilliant. She goes, oh, you know what this is like? And she turned to her daughter. She goes, you know how I put peppermint in the basement to ward off the spiders because they don't like that smell? It's just like this. I bet spiders and monsters are related. Oh. And the girl's like, yeah, I think so.
Oh my gosh. So
all of a sudden, this girl has this monster spray.
Oh.
And what we said was, hey, just spray it in the room before you go in. It'll dispel it, and you walk in.
I love it.
And I got a phone call literally the next day from the mom saying, listen, she took a shower by herself.
Oh my gosh.
she's sharing, and I did say, so because she was a big sister, I said, you know what? I bet you your little brother has a monster problem, and I think you could really help him. Do you think you would be willing to share your monster spray? And she's like, yeah.
Yeah.
And I use that story in the book as a metaphor for the rest of us.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
what ADHD people do is we get our divergent brains, we can think and imagine so many terrible things happening to us, right? And this is, I mean, this is really where.
Not anymore. I used to. I'm going to stop you. I'm going to stop you. I'm going to stop you and tell the audience. I used to be like that until I really got connected to God. You can say higher power, you can say source. Now I don't have that. I have a sense of peace, but it takes connecting to the divine energy. You could, like I said, every day I say God. I am so much calmer. I had a lot of these tendencies, but I know that connecting to the divine really changes things. You say it's hereditary.
Can I piggyback on what you just said?
Sure.
So I always want to talk about the most typical experience out there, and yours isn't the most typical. What you have done is you're like, listen, I don't have to live in this anxious state. And
I'm tired of it. Because
what
happens, right? What happened? I don't mean to interrupt you because we do that.
It's okay.
I do that because I have ADHD. But what I want to say is I got frustrated with myself. I recognized my short fuse. I recognized if somebody really irritated me, I could snap that quick. And I didn't want to be like that anymore. I didn't want to be that person. And I got tired of, I just didn't want to be like that. But I didn't know, how can I say, I didn't know that's what was going to change it, is my connection with God.
Well, and let's be clear, God isn't like, oh no, this one's defective. She's got ADHD. Like that's not who the divine is, right?
Yeah, right.
So when we go, oh, I am wired to see problems everywhere, and I am wired to overthink, and I am wired
overthinking. Yes, I overthink. I will remember that.
Because we're very sensitive. Those of us with ADHD, we don't have that prefrontal. Yeah, we don't have that prefrontal cortex to kind of weed out things. We're taking everything in and making meaning of it, which is kind of a definition of an empath, right? Yeah. And so God's saying, hey, listen, let me just take some of that burden though. You don't have to do all of this by yourself. And so you've learned, how do I ditch the overthinking, the chronic, the big emotions and all that? And how do I just step into the reality that I can feel and see many things that others can't?
Yeah, it's a balance. It really is a balance because you have to get to that point. And thank you for saying that. And, she said she's been listening to my show, guys. And she says, I'm one of her. She says, you're one of us. I know my people. I think, okay, and I'll say this. I know you give medication and I know some people give medication. I'm not real big on medication. I'm real big on meditation. But talk about I started to ask about hereditary. So before we get into the empathic part, because we've got some time left, there's two things I want to talk about. One, not realizing that you have this, realizing that it is hereditary. So my mother obviously had it, right? And my sisters probably had it, right? And then my kids have it.
Right.
How do you break the cycle of that? Is it just something that comes through our genes and then everybody's going to get it? Is that what you've seen or what? Yeah.
So, by the way, I don't prescribe meds.
God bless.
I let my clients figure that out. There are some people who are so tormented though.
They have to have it.
Yeah. They're in a ditch. They can't get out other ways. And so, yeah, I personally treat my ADHD. I don't think I talk about this out loud, but I treat it naturally. In other words, I know that if I eat right and if I meditate, my symptoms are managed. So I'm telling you though, not everyone is at that spot in their life. So I just want to, I agree with you a lot. So Hereditary, I'm actually, my next book is about this.
Oh, cool. Okay.
It runs in our families. So let's understand that there's different approaches, and let's learn how to live together so that we all can be healthy and live together.
Yeah. Okay.
And so it's not about breaking the cycle of ADHD. It's about breaking the cycle of bad behavior because of ADHD.
Right. So it's how we learn to deal with our emotions on the inside. So we all have to kind of work on that, and how, like I did, because I recognized it and I wasn't sure what it was, but I figured it out. I just figured it was because my mom was narcissistic. Now, do you see? Now let's go on to a whole nother subject. I'm an
Okay. I'll follow you anywhere. Okay.
She's great. All right. So we're both empaths. Does that have something? Is this connected?
I think it is. So it's now this, we're going into anecdotal territory. I don't have research to back this up.
It's fine. We're having a conversation.
But my clients fall in one or two categories.
Okay.
Either they're very egocentric,
narcissistic.
I don't want to say narcissistic. I want to say egocentric, because narcissism they're emotional vampires. They feed off other people.
Like us. They feed us, the empaths. They feed
off empaths, yeah. These are people who haven't developed everything's around their ego. How am I feeling? What am I thinking? What
all
am
about me? Yeah.
All about me. Narcissism is different, and it's far more dangerous than egocentric people.
Right.
But the other side are empaths. Mm-hmm. And I think it's about development. So I believe, because of how our brains are made, we tend to be egocentric people. And then as we grow and mature, we kind of realize, no, it's not all about me. Yeah. But then our brains are still letting too much information in, and we can connect those things, and we look like empaths. And I think we are empaths, because I don't know about you. Most of my clients can go, I just know these things.
Right. I'm energetic. Well, yeah. Well, it all started for me, and you probably haven't listened to all my shows, but when it started for me, I was connecting every day, and I sat down on the couch next to my husband, and I saw this girl with long, dark hair. And I knew he was cheating on me, and I could literally see her. And as you become more, yes, connected, you start to become more psychic and yep, more empathic. And it wasn't that I wanted to see this. It was shocking, and it was devastating, and it broke my heart. But I learned how empathic I am from that experience.
And to trust that. Yes.
Well, yeah, because, and then you don't want to trust it. You're like, oh, there's no way. But then you're like, well, it's there. You're seeing it. And as you do become more, and you know things, and then you have to learn to keep your mouth shut. You know what I mean? Because you become more and more, and then you're like, oh God, I can't say that. Like I told somebody, one of my friends said, or one of my kids' friends said, I'm gonna have a baby, and I'm like, oh, it's a boy, and she just looked at me, and I was like,
oh yeah, yep, that's
the boy. But see, you have to learn to shut up, because once you're tapped in, I just want to throw this out there, then you're like really tapped in. Do you know what I mean? And then you kind of,
that's exactly it.
Okay.
So, but here's what you did though. You made it more God, less you.
Correct. Oh, it is God. It's not me.
Right. And so when on some of my clients come to me and they're on the other end of the continuum,
they think it's them.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, not that, but they're just, everything, it revolves around them.
Yeah. Right.
Right. And so but they're not mean about it.
Right.
But you say something to them and they're like, well, what do you mean by that? Because they're just thinking how they feel.
Right.
And it's only how they feel. And then once you can kind of break through that and go, oh, hold up. No. It's not about me. It's about getting my right place with others and with God. Okay. Then now ADHD people are highly empathic. Mm-hmm. And when they can just kind of relax, that's when they know things.
Right.
Because and brains are picking things up that neurotypical brains just don't.
Correct. And, you know, and I think that I really feel that we're all here on earth at this time for a reason. I really,
Absolutely.
I feel that the empaths are here to wake up and to help the ascension, to help with raising the vibration, to bring in the love vibration, to bring in the compassion. You see, I just feel like we've lost this compassion for each other, like you know, you were talking about. And I think it takes a lot of empathic people to bring that caring, loving, kind vibration back.
It's funny. It's true. Is it Francis of Assisi who said, "Speak the gospel at all times, only use words when necessary"?
Yeah.
The idea there is empaths learn, like, my kindness, you will feel my kindness. Mm-hmm. And it really, you will respond to it. Mm-hmm. In my practice at the ADHD Center, I talk about, like, we hold the light for other people until they can hold it for themselves. They come to us battered and bruised, and they're mad at themselves. They're mad at everyone. They're sad. And we sit there and we hold it for them until they can hold it.
Right. And we also have to learn not to take it on, because that's another thing.
Exactly.
Oof. Yeah. Well, and that was a big lesson for me personally. I was married to a narcissist and didn't realize it. I just I totally lost myself in that whole situation. And they take our energy and we don't even realize it. And then a lot of people, I've dealt with a lot of people doing readings for them, and, you know, angel readings and stuff, where they didn't even realize it, but they're starting to wake up. And I think that's a wonderful thing that you've written this, because this doesn't get addressed very much. It's like you said, they always like pinpointed on the little brat in the back of the class that caused trouble. And that's not the case.
No. I want to just say something about this. Those of us with ADHD were low-hanging fruit for narcissists.
Oh, yeah.
And I was married to a narcissist too. Okay. And I kept trying to be a good wife. Mm-hmm. And I was never pretty enough. I was never thin enough. I was never good enough. And yet I had to feed the bonfire of his vanity. And it was hard. And my ADHD actually, sometimes ADHD people turn out to be people pleasers. Mm-hmm. When we haven't done the work yet, when we're not in the right place. That's true. People pleasing is it's egocentrism too, right? Mm-hmm. I'm going to please you so that I can be happy. And so we're low hanging fruit for some really bad people.
Yeah. It's sad. It's really sad.
That there is research on that. So
yes, there is a lot of research on that. There really is. And yeah, and I just think it's learning to love yourself, I think, is the biggest thing that you can do. And I'm sure that you work with your clients on that. And it's finally coming to the forefront, where a lot of the shows that I do, people talk about going within and loving themselves so that they can truly love and care about somebody else.
This is part of my next book that I'm really thinking about. It's loving yourself, but it's also differentiating yourself. A lot of ADHD folks lose themselves in the other.
Yes.
And so we need to understand where we end and others begin.
Why does that happen? Why do you think that happens? Why do we become is it because we're so empathic and we want to be people pleasers, and we think if we please them, then we'll be happy too?
You just said it. Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, this is fun. I don't get to talk about these sides of ADHD a lot. Right. Because we really are. It's the chapter in my next book's going to be called "The Problem with Empathy," right? Because empathy misguided will take us into some really bad directions.
Well, yeah. And you talk in your book, and I have a few more notes about depleting our batteries. And that really hit home with me, because, and it took me years, gosh, to realize that people were taking my energy and depleting my battery. I didn't realize that, because it's like we're energetic souls. We're made up of energy. And
Yeah.
we're being sucked dry and we're wondering why we're so tired or why our health. Like, have you ever seen a couple where the guy was a narcissist and the woman was an empath and he looked great and she looked awful?
Yeah.
Because he had sucked all her energy out.
Do you know, when I got divorced, people literally said, you look different.
Yeah, me too.
You look like you're just shining.
Me too.
And I'm like, I don't know what's different. And I'm like, oh, right. I'm not being sucked dry all the
And
time.
how is he doing? See, I bet he's not doing real well.
I think he's doing great. I think everyone.
Well, only because the only reason I say that is because, and I don't mean to interrupt you, they feed on our energy.
Yes. So he found just other places to feed.
Yes.
And so, I still pray for him. I want growth for him.
Right.
I'm not angry with him.
Right.
He hurts people close to him because he still has those, I want you to be pretty so I can get the attention kind of pattern, but he just found different sources. So I did write about energy, and ADHD people are we tend to have a lot of energy. We tend not to understand that we don't have limited. We wake up and we're like, this day is limitless. Right. It's like, no. We have the same battery that we did yesterday, and we have to watch our battery. And, because we're the possibility brains, when someone says, well, can you do this? I'm like, well, yes, it's possible. And then I'm like, no, let's check the energy usage a second. Let's see if you're going to have energy for that today.
Yeah.
And so those of us with ADHD, we misuse energy. We throw energy to places it doesn't need to be thrown.
Correct. And that's why I say I really do believe it's about finding balance.
Absolutely.
It's about finding the balance. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but see, you talked about your first thing you do in the morning is you balance yourself spiritually.
I have to, because then I'm balanced for the rest of the day. And right. Then when all this crazy stuff happens, it doesn't set me off so much. I just kind of watch it and go, oh, that's interesting.
And then you can observe instead of react.
Correct. I used to react and now I observe.
Yep. A lot of my clients are stuck in the reaction phase. They're just
yeah. I did that for
humans in general are, but ADHD folks, because we have big emotions, and we're impulsive with those big emotions, we're just throwing this big emotion out everywhere. And there's times I just spoke with a client this week, someone at a local store irritated him, and he wanted to teach that person a lesson, like just explain why this person, and I just said, why waste any of that energy?
I know. And I want to bring that up. I want to talk about this really quick before we get out of here. Is that something? Why do these little tiny things that people say to us bug us so much? Like this is so silly, okay? And you're going to laugh, but it bothered me. I had some people stay at my house and they're like, your ketchup is expired. And so is your mustard. And I'm like, well, it's probably because I don't use it. And it's like 2 years old. And we were throwing it away. And I'm just like, that is so flippin' rude. So why did that? And that stuck in my crop like all day. And and why?
Okay, one, because let's be honest, you have ADHD. And here's what happened. It felt personal because the limbing system reacted first. And the limbic system's like, I'm sorry, what's that? My ketchup is expired. And whereas a neurotypical could go, okay, whatever, that seems to be a you problem. We're like, how dare you, madam?
That's me. I'm like,
in the next book, I'm really talking about like, we need to just shake that off. But I have that. And by the way, I'll remember that for years. Okay.
Shake it off. I know. So how do you shake that off? And this is where, okay, we got to get out of here for today, Tamara. But I'll tell you what, this is like a whole nother show. This is where I've been working on reprogramming my brain so that when that thought comes in, I have to like push it out because it really does bother me. And it's so stupid. It's like the littlest thing in the world. And any normal person would think that's nuts. But
no,
for me,
this is what we do.
Yeah.
Can I give you two tips?
Sure.
Now, I think you have more sophisticated ways of doing this, but maybe your listeners, this might be helpful.
Okay.
I do one of two things. I pretend I hold it in my hand, the thought, and I kind of laugh at it going, oh, Tamara, you silly girl, you're upset about ketchup. And I kind of look and go, it's okay. And not in a mocking way, but kind of in a, seriously, ketchup, honey? Like, that kind of.
Bringing it back to reality. Bringing it back
to, oh, I'm so cute when I get upset about ketchup. Like, it just kind of let it go. Some of my other clients, I literally teach them to swipe. And, kind of like a Tinder date you don't want to be on. Like, swipe it. And the physicalness of swiping it helps kind of, nope, moving on. And a lot of my clients kind of develop physical ways of catching the cognitive part, and it really helps them. Wow. So one of my clients, she's delightful. She swipes, and then when she can leave it swiped, she high fives herself.
I love it. Tamara, how can people get in touch with you? Do you have a website?
I do have a website. My author's website is tamararosier.com.
Okay.
And my company website is miadhd.com.
Okay. So if people want to contact you from across the country, are they welcome to? Do you do Zoom conferences and stuff like that?
Okay. So I cannot take new clients.
Oh.
A year. And I'm sorry. Yes. However, because I'm writing the second book and I have a full client list right now, I run a center where I hire the best people.
Well, how do we get in touch with them?
miadhd.com.
Okay, you guys. Hey.
And we do work across the country. The only people who can are the therapists because they're licensed by state.
I love it. Her book is Your Brain's Not Broken. You've got to pick this up. It's by Tamara Rosier. She's a PhD. Tamara, thanks for coming on the show. You're going to have to come back.
Oh, I love you. You're a hoot. So thank you.
God bless. All right, you guys. This is Nancy Yearout. This is High Road to Humanity. Everybody take care and God bless. Please join me next time on the High Road with stories full of love and hope for our future. You can find High Road to Humanity on TogiNet Radio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and now watch The High Road on Binge TV networks. My channel is High Road to Humanity. Have a blessed week, and know by staying on the High Road, you will make it to your destination. For a psychic empath reading, visit my website, nancyyearout.com, to book your date and time with me. I will deliver your messages from the angels, and God bless.